Okay, I'm ready to get started on our public meeting, please. I'm on page 89 of our agenda. This is the public meeting on the official plan. Just like to welcome everybody here. This afternoon, I will now officially open the public meeting. It's held under the Planning Act and, of course, the Municipal Act. I'd like to advise those in attendance that the Ontario Municipal Board or the local planning tribunal has the power under the Planning Act to dismiss an appeal to either a zoning bylaw and/or an official plan amendment if the appellant does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or does not make written submission to Norfolk County Council before the zoning bylaw is passed and/or before the official plan amendment is adopted. On page 89, you will see staff report DCS 18-07. It's the 5-year official plan review / official plan amendment. I now open the public meeting on staff report DCS 18-07. Just a reminder to everyone in attendance that this is the summation of a multi-year review and public engagement across and around the official plan. At this stage, we have already circulated the proposed official plan once to the ministry. I highlight this to you as tonight our purpose is to not consider new proposals on the OP. Once we get to the point when we open the floor to the public, you are free to come up and make statements, of course, if you desire. We're glad to hear your statements. I can tell you my hope as chair of this meeting is that we can pass a bylaw tonight. Failing that, I hope we can at least give staff definite direction on any final amendments to the zoning bylaw, or to the bylaw itself, along with direction to place on the next council agenda for approval. So hopefully I can help us keep on task and we can complete this matter tonight, but if we don't, it's always tomorrow. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, just wondered if you can refresh my memory or staff, how long have we been working on this official plan now? I know every 5 years it's supposed to be reviewed. So from the end of the first of the 5-year review, do you know how long it's been up till now? Has it been like a couple of years? Or?
I'm going to ask Mary. My guess, I would say, it was at least 2 years, but Mary would know a little better than I would. Mary, do you have a rough idea when we started this? How long?
Mr. Mayor, staff began the work in the fall of 2014, but really the first terms of reference, the draft that came here to ask if we could consult with the community, was in the spring of 2015.
So it's been a while.
3 years. Almost 3. It's been a while. We'll leave it at that. Thank you. And Mary, I see that Matt Rayner is back. Matt, welcome. Always good to see you and have your expertise here. So I will ask staff, Mary, if you wish to proceed at this time with your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I was to introduce the report, and you covered quite a bit of it in your introductory comments. So I think I will move over to the section on discussion and analysis, because really we are at the final step in Phase 4, the statutory public meeting, as you have mentioned. And so we want to bring to you changes that we may have made, things that we still have questions on, because tonight we do in fact have the draft bylaw in front of you. So a few changes or corrections that have been made, just to address the provincial comments, and the fact that I did go and visit with the Environmental Advisory Committee, the Agriculture Advisory Board, the Tourism and Economic Development Committee, and the Heritage Committee, and also our staff technical team. So from them, there were a variety of small things that they suggested, but for the most part, there was not very much that they were looking for. So there were a few technical changes that came from the technical committee, and we have put what we got from the Forestry Division, because it came in writing, as an attachment to the report, in attachment 2. But other than that, on the top of the report, page 6, there are a few reference changes that were made. Schedule B has been updated with all the Conservation Authority and Ministry of Natural Resources changes that we've done in the zoning bylaw because of the policy that's in it, that we could update those provincially significant wetlands or hazard land lines with the support of the Conservation Authority. So it seemed best to make sure that the official plan was consistent and in sync with those zoning changes. We've also added an aggregate resource area based on support we obtained from the Ministry of Natural Resources, just to the north and west of Simcoe. Locally, we would refer to that as the Livingston Pit. And there is one change, if I could just advance the schedule here. There was a reference on this schedule, Schedule B1, that it's the marine reference. If you could go to the next slide, it shows it a little closer. No, back one. There just should have been a reference to 7.3.1 where we have that symbol for marine use. So that has been corrected since you last saw it. And then the next slide shows that on this slide, C7, we did mapping that aligned all of our properties with the actual land edge. And so that caused a little bit of a change to one of the viewpoints. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see it in close-up. It's just in the south corner where South Walsingham and Houghton come together, right at the lakeshore. There was a bit of an adjustment there that just caused that symbol to be moved somewhat. So the symbol was always there, it's just been adjusted a little bit. So those are two changes that I am aware of to the schedule since you last saw them. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Matt to talk about the industrial lands, Oxford County, and the comments from the Conservation Authority.
At the council, or on November 22nd, 2017, council directed staff to pursue options to relating to our recommendations relating to the Cortland and Delhi urban boundaries. The Cortland urban boundary was being expanded to include the expansion of Titan trailers on the east side, relating to some amendments that had previously been approved by council. And in Delhi, there's a recent amendment for the Scots to expand the urban boundary to include the expansion of that industrial facility. Now, both of those expansions, when we did the industrial policy review, we were in support of those expansions because it's important to retain industry and employment and encourage more industrial employment within the county. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs has asked us to look at reducing the urban area boundary elsewhere for the equivalent amount of land. And council directed us to take that review. We'll start with Cortland. The Titan trailer, the total expansion of the Titan trailer facility is about almost 15 hectares. And we looked at 8 areas in total that could be looked at for reducing the urban area boundary. Of those 8, we recommended 3 be considered by council. Area 1, I was just going to refer to the. How's this work? Area 1 is up here in the north corner. It's separated from the rest of the industrial area by a drainage channel. Area 2 and Area 5 here. Planning staff have met with with the owners involved. We do have a submission from, I think it's Lakin Haulage that owns this land in here, including Area 1, and they're not in favor of having any land removed. We do have an indication from the owners of Area 2 that they are favorable to having that land removed. Planning staff met with the owner here, and the owner is amenable to a smaller area being removed. There is a drainage channel in here and some hazard lands, and basically it's these lands in the bottom end that they're amenable to having removed. And in the staff report, the total areas of 1, 2, and 5 is about 14 hectares. If you, it's up to council to determine what they want to do with that. I would point out that Titan Trailers, it's basically the ministry's comments comes from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and at Titan Trailers is presently designated in agriculture with a special policy provision in the official plan. The prospects of that land ever being returned to agriculture, I would think, is very minimal. There's quite a bit of capital investment there today, and more is coming or is underway. So that's something for council to consider. Moving on to Delhi. There's really only two parcels that we identified that could be considered by council. And this is just off of Wilson Road. And here, the owner of area, we're looking at about 4 hectares of land. That was taken up by the Scots expansion. Area 1, the owner has indicated that they would prefer their land to remain within the industrial designation. Area 2, the owner, I think, farms this area and farms in this area and is amenable to the change. I should point out that council recently approved the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for Scots, which included the expansion of the urban area boundary. And that application has gone through its appeal period, and there has been no appeals to that decision, including no appeal from the ministry. The next boundary adjustment is in this area in here, so west side of Simcoe. The county works yard, I think, is right here, and then there was an application for a car dealership, I think a Nissan dealership, right on the edge. The county works yard actually includes this land in here as well. It wraps around the property that will be part of the car dealership if that's approved. It's a land that is not farmed today, with the works yard on a large part of that property. It's likely not to be farmed in the future. The only area that we identified that could be removed from the urban area boundary in Simcoe is on the east side, north of this area in here, north of some recent commercial applications. This area does not include the former railway right-of-way, which I know some councillors have talked about as being maybe a future road at some point, or at least would like to have that option open to them. The owner of that property was contacted, and they as well would prefer that their land remain within this current designation. So those are the boundary adjustments that we were asked to look at. So we're looking at, for council direction on that tonight as to how to proceed. There are resolutions at the beginning of the report relating to the Cortland urban area boundary and the Delhi urban area boundary. I should point out that the mapping that is in the bylaw that's before council tonight does not include any of these boundary adjustments. It also, there isn't a resolution there with respect to the Simcoe boundary, but the mapping that's in the bylaw includes the proposed car dealership property and the entire county works yard property within the urban area boundary. So that map there reflects what's in the bylaw that's before you tonight.
Matt, would you entertain a question or two on these boundary adjustments at this time, or do you want us to hold our questions?
That's up to council.
I think we'll, have you got anything else on the boundary adjustments?
Not
The
on
urban
those-
boundary, well, let's deal with any questions. Councillor Oliver, sorry, Councillor Geisens first, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question is this: what if we just said we're not going to change that? What's the province going to do to us?
Mr. Mayor, that's a good question. As you know, this plan has to go to the province for approval. The province has options. They can approve the plan as submitted by the county. They can ask for modifications to the plan, which could include, the mapping modifications or some form that we're discussing tonight. So they can approve it in part, modify part. They can send some parts back to the county to have another look at and come up with options. So there's a number of things that they can do. They are the approval body for this amendment.
So how many hectares or acres are they telling us that we're going to have to cut back on? I'm not 100% certain that I know it's here. It says total, but there's two different numbers. What are the numbers that we're going to have to give up, I guess, is the easiest way to put it?
It's approximately 4 hectares in Delhi and approximately 15 hectares in Cortland.
So, okay. The hard part that I have is this: they can get thousands of acres in London to basically annex and put factories on it. Here we have about 15 or let's say 20 hectares, and it's nothing as far as I'm concerned. The only other thing that really bothers me is if we have to send this back to the province, how long is it going to take before they tell us, yes, you can keep what you got, or no, you're going to have to take this out? So can you tell me how long that would take, or do we have any kind of an idea?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've been told that the provincial review would take approximately 6 months.
Oh, God. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I think everybody's anxious to get this somewhat resolved tonight. And Matt, if I heard your comments correctly, again, I'm speaking now about the Cortland land that we want to identify. We need 14.9 hectares. Parcel number 2 that you described to us is approximately 7.4 hectares. And that property owner was agreeable to have their land revert back to agriculture. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and with respect to parcel number 5, down in the south end of Cortland, a portion of their land, they were amenable to have revert back to agriculture from industrial or from within the urban boundary, correct? A portion.
That's correct, and I understand the portion is about 2 hectares.
Okay, good, thank you. So we're almost at 10 hectares of land presently within the urban boundary that landowners are prepared to have revert back to agriculture in order for us to accomplish the 14.9 hectares that we wish to allow the expansion of Titan trailers. 2/3, in other words. Is that about correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I think we've done very well, and I don't know whether staff will entertain it, and if you want to deal with this one, because these two are so important, if you want to deal with them now, I'm sure my colleague from Ward 2 would be prepared to put that motion
Yes.
forward, but I think we should be saying we want that land of Titan trailers converted to industrial as per their request, and we have approximately 10 hectares of land and willing landowners presently zoned industrial or urban that are prepared to move it back to agriculture. I think that's the best we can do with respect to Cortland. And on the Delhi one, Mr. Mayor, our planner, I think, indicated to us the ministry has chosen not to object to our decision of a few weeks ago to go ahead and change the Scott's property, the 4 hectares that they were asking for. We made an attempt with other available lands to see if we had willing landowners. We were declined. It would be my suggestion that we direct, secondly on this, we direct that the Scott's land be redesignated in the OP as industrial as per their request. I think we've made a really good attempt on those two and have had some success, but I think we need to go ahead. And that may be what they're suggesting in the report. I agree, Councillor, but I'm not sure what's in the recommendation talked about all 3 in the case of Cortland, unless I misunderstood.
Well, what we're going to do is go through the entire public meeting, and then we're going to go to any and all motions. We must follow the protocol of the public meeting. You're quite right. I agree with your comments that we're going to have to be specific on what we want in the motion and the direction to staff. It's just vague in this. Okay, so thank you for that. Councillor Brunton, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. My question, first of all, is could you go back to the Simcoe map there for a moment? The one that shows in detail to the west by the county garage. Yeah. So that line there, if I may, that's the current urban boundary, correct? Or does that include?
To you, Mr. Mayor, that is not the current.
That's the new one?
That's the proposed urban boundary that's in the bylaw that's before you tonight.
Okay, all right. And that takes in that lot?
It takes in the lot and the county garage.
Okay, all right. So I wasn't clear on that. My second question is if I'm understanding this right, to revert land back to agriculture, you say you've talked to these people. Who would do, like, is there some form of compensation? How does that work? Who in their right mind would want to revert it back to agriculture if they're not compensated in some form or another? Am I asking the wrong question there or no?
I'm the person who discussed the options with the people that did come forward or received the letters or emails. I did not try to strong-arm them in any way. I didn't offer any compensation. I just said, this is what council is looking at as far as Titans and Scots, and they've asked us to explore options. And they either said they were supportive or they were not supportive. We did not discuss any compensation because that was not on the board as far as I was aware from council's direction.
So if they're totally clear on what they're doing.
Yes, sir, I believe they are. Provided maps and had a good discussion, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the boundary adjustment at this point? Mr. Columbus?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Oliver put it well. I think he's right on. I think, it's all about rural economic development and retaining jobs in the rural community. And for our staff to come up with 2/3 of the allocation that was required, I think that's good. They've negotiated well. As far as the Scots one goes, that's 20 acres or 4.5 hectares. And there was no appeal. The OMB could have appealed our decision, and they didn't. So I'm prepared to go with Councillor Oliver's suggestion that it's a done deal. That's the way I see it.
Okay, anything further on this?
I'm trying to find my spot in
Yeah,
this,
take
in the
your
staff
time.
report. Just bear with me for a moment. There were, we did receive a letter from Oxford County about the
Yes.
redesignation of the Norfolk Mall. They suggested some rewording to the official plan, or the proposed amendments to the official plan.
Page 124.
And we've reviewed those amendments and we're satisfied with them. Basically, the amendments relate to the servicing of the lands. There is an agreement with Oxford County or Tillsonburg regarding the servicing, which comes from Tillsonburg. And that's been a situation that's been ongoing since the inception of the mall. So that has a bearing on the land uses. And they've also asked that the hamlet policies be considered as part of any consideration, any proposed amendments that might occur on those lands, in addition to the commercial policies. There's also a number of minor wording changes that they suggested. The changes that have been suggested by Oxford County, and their letter is attached to the report, have been incorporated into the draft bylaw that's before you tonight. The technical team had there was a meeting on December the 6th with the technical team, which includes the engineering staff, park staff, any staff that has any relationship or interest in the official plan. And there was a number of further amendments that came forward as a result of that. None of them I would consider as significant. One is adding policies in the major public infrastructure designation to the fact that capital improvements are subject to environmental assessments. So we've added a policy that relates to that section of the official plan. There's some additional policies relating to walking, cycling, and trails. The suggestion of adding a blue trail, which would incorporate boating or water-related activities as part of our trail system, or linking the trail system to that kind of recreation opportunity. Also added a policy about that the county will have and maintain a walking, cycling trails master plan. It already has that kind of master plan. I think it's part of the sustainable master plan that was done last year. There's a significant walking, cycling trail component in that. And there were also policies added to, relating to urban community design and urban forestry, basically relating to the tree cover, providing some more flexibility to the implementation of responsible tree management, replacement, that kind of thing within urban areas and urban forestry. So those changes as well have been incorporated into this draft bylaw.
Can we entertain a few questions on the Tilsonburg Center, please? Are you okay with that, Matt?
Yes.
Councillor Geisens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I'm trying to find out is, what is the actual designation going to be? Is it going to be, what is it? I had it here a minute ago, but anyway, it says something about a special...
It's a special provision, Hamlet
special,
to
yes.
shopping center, and now Oxford wants to go back to Hamlet. I think that's your question. What is it going to be? Good
Yes.
question.
That's part of it.
It's based, the recommendation in the bylaw is that right now there's a special policy area in the Hamlet designation for the Norfolk Mall. It's a major commercial facility. It's being moved into the shopping center designation, basically as is, because there is a special policy that has various limitations in terms of the amount of grocery floor space and retail space that's in that mall. And those restrictions and limitations are retained. So there really isn't any substantive change to that. Any additions or significant reuse of the facility may require retail market studies, but that is the situation today, and we'll carry it forward. Tilsonburg's very concerned about the health of their downtown, and they want that assessed if any major expansion was proposed for that development.
So what I read here, and I finally found it, thank you, Mr. Mayor, is it going to be shopping center commercial? Is that what's the designation is going to be?
Yes, it's going into the shopping center commercial designation.
So what happens if there were someone who wanted to, whatever it is, I'm not going to name anybody, but what happens if something similar to a Walmart or something may want to come to that area? We have a building that's been sitting empty for I don't know how long right now. So theoretically, they did move to Tilsonburg, Walmart, but there may be others interested in another one. So you're telling me that we're going to have to go through a whole lot of loops to be able to, I guess, either find somebody to take that over or someone to build a new building on that particular property. So is that possible?
The reuse of the existing or the former Walmart could happen. I don't think there's any approvals that would be required for that. It's the designation today allows that amount of floor space to be devoted to that kind of purpose. If they wanted to expand that floor space, then they would have to go through amendments to the zoning bylaw and the official plan. But that requirement exists today.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to planning. So let's say this official plan goes through and it's formalized. How long after do they have the ability to do a zoning amendment or an official plan amendment? Is there a moratorium period, or can they come the very next day to do one?
My understanding that this is an update to the official plan, so there's no limitation on that time period where they can make an amendment.
And that's with all things in our official plan?
Pardon, I didn't quite hear the question.
And that's with all things in our official plan? So the very next day after we put this forward, we could have 10 official plan amendments come forward?
That's possible. If you were to do a brand-new official plan, I understand that there's a 2-year period, but council can also waive that period.
Just wanted to be clear. So when I'm looking at the Tilsonburg Mall here, on page 127, it says here that we will allow, in section C, that we will allow some stores up to 50 square meters. It's awfully generous of us. Shoebox stores. How did we come up with that figure?
If I could, through the mayor, that is the same number as what was set in place by the Ontario Municipal Board order when what was put in policy right now came into place. We haven't changed anything. We've just moved it from hamlet to shopping center. That's it.
Do you not have the ability to change it? I can't see a big demand for a bunch of little dinky stores.
There has been nothing that's come forward through the review, nothing from public or from council that there was a desire to change any areas. We also, don't forget, completed a commercial background study that indicated we had more than enough land already designated for commercial uses. I don't remember all the details of what Matt Rennier and Associates put in that report right now, but we certainly have based what we have now on that background review, which the provincial policy requires that we do these comprehensive reviews.
Thank you for that. Now, I guess through the mayor to you is, when we do these land use studies, do we take into all of Norfolk County into consideration? So if Simcoe has a surplus of commercial land, we hold back the Norfolk Mall site? Is that how it works? It's based over the entire county?
Not talking about the Norfolk Mall, but my understanding of the market studies that have been done in the county is that they generally have not taken the entire county into consideration. The studies that I examined for recent commercial proposals in Simcoe did not look at the entire county as a market area. One of the recommendations in the retail market study policies is that the market studies take into account the impact on the retail structure in the entire county, which would include Port Row and Delhi and other communities, because there may be an impact, and the council needs to be aware of that.
And my last question was, I thought I remember seeing a letter from this developer or this landowner that was in support of these changes, and yet it's not included in this package that we've received today.
Through the mayor, I think that letter, you're right, I'd forgotten about that, but that would have been included back in June when we would have received it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A question, Matt, I have, and I apologize for dragging this on, but I'm still not clear on where we're going with this mall. You're telling me that we're going to go ahead and change it from hamlet special policy to commercial special policy. Is that true? That was your original recommendation, I believe.
It was a special policy area within the hamlet designation, and it's being moved as a special policy area within the shopping center designation, because that's really what, the scale of that mall is similar to the shopping centers that you would have on the Queensway in
Yes.
Simcoe. It's a similar nature, so.
And the reason I need clarification, if I may, is that when I read attachment 3, Oxford County's letter, the bottom of our page 124, the first page of attachment 3, 3 times Oxford County is saying that we recognize you want to simply move it forward, but they are still concerned in relocating it from hamlet, special area, to shopping center, commercial, special area. Further down, they want to ensure that the unique circumstances of the site reflected in the new policy does not change. Further, these suggested modifications clarify the underlying official plan policy. And the part that I underline is that the property remains within the hamlet of Norfolk North. So what you're saying is we are going to change it, but it's going to remain within the hamlet. Because back on your recommendations on the beginning of this report, it simply says that in the recommendations to council, that staff recommend adjustments to that they recommend policy adjustments for the Norfolk Mall as submitted by Oxford County. I don't think we're doing exactly what Norfolk County is asking, but we are keeping it in the hamlet designation as far as that request from them, correct?
We're following the recommendations from Oxford County. I think their concern is that putting in a shopping center designation may open the door a little bit in terms of what kind of facilities down the road might occur on that site, because it's being moved to a shopping center designation. But it's a large commercial development. It has some vacant storefronts, some vacant land. They're concerned ultimately about what that impact might be on Tillsonburg. But I think that's where their concern is coming from. So we've added the wording that they've suggested. The Tillsonburg controls, in many ways, the development of the site, because the sewer and water services are provided by Tillsonburg, and the property owner is tied in with an agreement with Tillsonburg for that. So, quite a large extent, they do control, have a lot of input into what can happen on that development.
Well, another way of putting my question would be, you initially wanted to remove it from the hamlet designation, correct?
Yes.
And now you're saying we can live with this by leaving the hamlet designation?
It's within the boundary of the Norfolk North Hamlet area, but within that boundary, it is designated as a shopping center commercial designation.
Yes.
So within the other hamlets in the county, there's no other land use designation. So it's within the hamlet area, but it's designated shopping center.
Yeah, and I hope that somebody doesn't think because they sell us water and sewer that they can tell us what we have to have in our official plan. I don't think that's the way I want to do business anyhow. Anyhow, let's move on, okay? Thank you for your answer.
Excuse me. The other major point would be the comments from the Long Point Conservation Authority. There are comments from some of the advisory committees. I think the most important one is from the Agriculture Advisory Committee or Board, who was recommending that the lot swap policy that was before council in June, and which has been removed from the proposed bylaw, be put back in. But aside from that, the other substantive comments are from the Long Point Conservation Authority. And I should point out that the Conservation Authority comments on the official plan as an agent for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. So they're the delegated commenting agency, and that's their responsibility. So they have made a number of recommendations, and I think it's attached this table or 3C in the staff report. And I'll just go through that. Number one is the Normandale Resort Area Special Policy Area, and they would like recommending that safe access be a requirement for any development in the Normandale area. They're also recommending in the Normandale Special Policy Area that the right now any like a residence or new dwelling has to be, the wording right now refers to the flood proofing to the top of the ground floor of residences, and they are recommending that it be to remove the ground floor and replace it with foundation, so it'd be flood proof to the top of the foundation. Number 3 is deals with the Long Point and Turkey Point Resort Area Safe Access Special Policy Area, and they've made a number of suggestions there. The council has asked that a policy be put into the plan, basically that development and redevelopment maybe just a sec, I'll see if I can find the actual wording. The wording that's been added to the plan is redevelopment or replacement of existing development may be permitted subject to the provision of safe access, notwithstanding the policies of section 7322 hazard land designation of this plan. The problem that they have is that that policy will not allow any redevelopment or replacement of dwellings in those two areas because there is no safe access. And that was documented in the report, I think, that went to council in early July of last year. So that's, I don't think that was the intention of council when they directed that be incorporated into the draft amendments. So that's an issue. They've asked, there's issue about the scale of vacation homes or redevelopment of vacation homes, and they've also asked that a policy or council consider adding a policy that commits the county to undertaking a comprehensive investigation of means to resolve the safe access issue. So that's an outstanding issue. It's a concern. The PPS has specific policies in the hazard land areas relating to safe access. So,
I got a couple of questions at this point. If I can just pause for a moment. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I have three of them on this one. On page 132, it talks about, over here, the recommendation is to remove building foundation area and insert usable